Konnichiwa. Today we're going to talk about a revolutionary approach to acquiring Japanese, which is the organic approach that I call the one-deck approach. What this does is minimize the amount of time we spend on studying Japanese or even practicing Japanese and maximizing the amount of time we spend living Japanese, consuming Japanese, enjoying Japanese. And that isn't just because we're lazy. It's because actually enjoying, ingesting, living the language is not just the most efficient way of learning it. It's the only way of learning it. Anything else you do, any study, any practice, is just scaffolding, just things that are there to help you to do what you really need to learn the language, and that is live it. With a one-deck method, most of the time you spend acquiring Japanese, that is to say, the years you spend growing up in the Japanese language, you can spend 90% of the time living Japanese and only around 10% studying it. And most of that 10% will be spent in your one deck. Now we need a certain amount of study for learning Japanese. Most methods are study-centered. Obviously, the old-school textbook methods are study-centered, but even more modern methods that purport to be based on immersion are heavily study-centered, often through SRS. And many people who regard themselves as immersionists spend the majority of their time in SRS. With a one-deck method, you just have this one deck. Why do we need to study at all? 3 reasons. First of all, we need to understand the structure of the language. If we don't understand that, we can't do any immersion because we don't know how sentences hold together. We can't understand them. Secondly, we need vocabulary. Obviously, if we don't know words, we can't understand what's being said. And most people can't pick up words quickly enough and completely enough that they can do it with no help at all. But with the organic method, we pick up words as we go along through our immersion from a very early stage, and we're only using our single deck to pin words in place. The third thing we need is kanji. Now, you can't learn kanji without some kind of study. Japanese children do 9 years of it. But the one-deck method uses just the one deck for kanji and vocabulary together. That's not to say that we have kanji cards and we have vocabulary cards. They're the same cards. We don't learn kanji in the abstract. We only learn kanji as parts of words as we come to them in our immersion. And we learn structure not from any deck, but by going through my structure course. Once you've done the first, say, 20 lessons, you can start immersion. So what is the one-deck method? What is the one deck? The one deck is simply a straightforward vocabulary deck that will take you right through your Japanese adventure from nearly the beginning to the point where you decide you don't need to use any study methods at all. And if you're starting this from the beginning, I'm going to give you a template that will help you to build that deck. We'll talk about that towards the end. What does the deck need to look like? Well, the front of the deck should have one thing on it and one thing only, and that is a word written in kanji, if it has kanji, unless the kanji are relatively rarely used. And on the back, we need to have the reading of the word written in hiragana. We should have an audio file of the pronunciation of the word, and if we're using Yomi-chan, that will be put in automatically. We want a definition of the word, either in English or in Japanese, and we'll be moving gradually toward Japanese definitions as we go along. I've done a video on that, so you can take a look at that if you want to. And in most cases, we should have a sentence. Now, this can be the sentence in which we originally found the word or any other sample sentence. We don't have to have one every time, but it's a good idea to have one as often as possible. This will be in Japanese, of course, and I recommend using text-to-speech which can be incorporated easily into Anki so that you can hear that sentence as well as see it. And I'm going to put links for all these things in the information section below. Now the deck may help us with other things as well as vocabulary and kanji, but those other things we can regard as bonuses or side benefits. We'll probably learn something from our sample sentences as we go along. And the cards in our one deck we regard as dynamic entities. I've made a video on the concept of dynamic cards. So as we go along, if we find there are problems with aspects that we're not remembering, we annotate the cards to help us get over those problems, to disambiguate things that are ambiguous. And if there are things in the sample sentence that we want to remember, secondary words, etc., anything we want, we can put onto the back of the card. And because the cards are strongly audio-based, ideally we should have not only the word in audio and the example sentence in audio, but as we move into Japanese definitions, we'll have the definition in audio as well. We can, most of the time, just listen to the back of the card once we become a little bit more advanced. And we're mostly not using English definitions. We'll either listen to the sentence and remember what the word means, or the definition, and only if we're in trouble, if we can't remember the word, will we actually need to look at the back of the card at all. But if we do need to look at it, we'll have notes, mnemonics, anything we happen to pop in there last time we had trouble, and using the techniques I've taught you for easing in Japanese definitions, after a while, most of the time you won't even need to look at the back of the card. You'll hear either a Japanese definition or a Japanese sentence which will let you know whether you got the word on the front right or not, and only if you didn't get it right will you need to actually look at the card. That'll happen most of the time. Not all the time, doesn't matter if it's all the time, but this will be the most usual pattern with cards after a while. Now why can we get away with just having this one vocabulary kanji deck? The reason is that we're putting all the weight of our acquisition of Japanese on the only thing that does allow you to acquire Japanese, and that's using Japanese. Lots of people put off actually using Japanese to some point in the future when they've learned enough that it won't be difficult. But that point really never comes. Until you've been using Japanese for a while, using Japanese is always going to be difficult, however much preparation you've put in. So the best thing to do, the most efficient thing to do, is put in as little preparation as you can get away with and start using the language as early as possible. You're going to be watching anime with Japanese subtitles, learning structure from my structure videos, understanding the anime, even if it takes you a long time to work through an anime, and then listening to it again and again, often while you're doing other things, so that you're getting the language, getting the structures, getting the vocabulary into your mind. Of course, you'll be looking things up. Of course, you'll often be going back to my structure videos and revising them so that you get those structures deep into your mind. But apart from that, all you really need to do is keep ingesting the language. Terribly slowly at first, because it is very difficult at first, but the more you do it, the faster it gets. And essentially, it is just a matter of how much time you put into it. Some people say, I've studied Japanese for years and I'm still nowhere near understanding it. But the thing is that studying Japanese isn't measured in years. It isn't measured in months. It isn't even measured in weeks. It's measured in hours. 2 years studying Japanese could represent a few dozen hours, or it could represent hundreds or thousands. And it's those hours that count. Even the hours when you're passively just listening to a story on your phone or your iPod. This is the core of learning Japanese, working slowly through unfamiliar material, listening to familiar material, continually ingesting Japanese. using it outwardly in any ways that you have the opportunity to use it outwardly. The only study you really need, apart from structure, is that one deck. If you're doing anything other than that, you should at least stop to ask yourself whether it's really helping very much. It might be. People learn differently. And of course, some people really enjoy study, and if you really enjoy study, go ahead and do lots of it. But don't be under the illusion that you ever learn Japanese from study. You don't. You only learn about Japanese from study. And that's why we have this one deck strategy. The one deck will pin into place the words that you acquire as you acquire them from your immersion. Only a few people can learn words from exposure alone. Most people need something to pin them in place, but that's all. Just pin them in place. Just hold them between real exposures. Nobody can learn kanji just by looking at them. We need to break down their structure, write on the back of our cards some kind of mnemonic for how the kanji holds together. And I've talked about how to break down kanji and learn them in another video, and I'll pop a link above my head and in the information section below. So we need this little bit of scaffolding. We need something to pin words in place, we need something to drill kanji, and we need structure. Structure, my structure lessons take care of. Pinning words and learning kanji, the one deck takes care of. Not forgetting vocabulary over time, the one deck takes care of. All the rest of your Japanese time should go into Japanese, not study, not scaffolding, not exercises, not various kinds of SRS, not sentence mining, but simply ingesting Japanese, and then, whenever you're up to it, speaking Japanese and ingesting Japanese, and writing Japanese and ingesting Japanese, and living Japanese and enjoying Japanese. Because when learning Japanese, the motto is more pain, less gain. You only learn it by living it and loving it. Now, I've made videos before, and I'll put a link above my head and in the information section below, showing you how you can use Yomi-chan to make cards automatically from your reading. But a lot of people ask me, how do I go about getting Yomi-chan to send cards into my Anki? Now, if you've already got this set up, that's fine, but if you're having trouble with it, I've made a template deck. There's nothing much in it, but the important thing about it is that it has the fields you need, and I'm naming the fields with the same tokens that you need to insert from Yomi-chan. So this is going to be much less confusing when you start trying to integrate your deck with Yomi-chan. So if you'd like to download that, please go ahead and I'll put a link in the information section below. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments below and I will answer as usual. I'd like to thank my gold Kokeshi patrons and all my patrons and supporters on Patreon and everywhere, my producer angels who make these videos possible. And I'd like to thank you for attending this lesson. これからもよろしくお願いします。Class dismissed.